The Jedi Temple is under attack. An attempt has been made to kill Yoda. A dangerous intruder has infiltrated the Jedi. Everybody is under suspicion, and no one is safe from harm. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-gonn Jinn must get to the heart of the conspiracy, or watch the temple be destroyed from the inside.
Hello, younglings, and welcome back to the Padawan Library, the podcast that reads only junior novels, not young adult novels, junior novels, 7 to 10-year-olds, get it right. I'm Levi Paratic. With me, as always, is Tim May. Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, and let's just make that clear. Junior novels. So if you want us to cover the new Padme book, doesn't count. That's a young adult novel.
Yeah,
right?
That book looks interesting.
I will be reading it soon,
it.
And maybe we'll talk about it in like an introduction segment or something.
Yeah,
we can talk,
I agree.
But we're never going to do a full review of it, okay? There might be some special circumstances where we would do that, but that's not one of them, unfortunately.
That's not today. Not today.
Not today. So last episode, we delved into the new canon a little bit. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, Guardians of the Wills. That was exciting.
We're back to Legends this week. Back to Jedi Apprentice again.
Back to Jude Watson.
Jude back again. So we'll talk about that in a bit. That we're going to read the Captive Temple a bit later. But otherwise, some listeners of this podcast know that I edit the podcast, as it says at the end. And it is currently, we're recording this, it's April 22nd, and I'm in grad school, and it's the end of the semester, so this is a very hectic time for me. I apologize. I don't know if listeners have felt some sort of tension on the last few episodes. When I was editing them, I was like, man, like, I seem really mad about, like, whenever Levi goes on for like more than like 2 minutes, I'm like, hurry up. I don't say it, but you can just feel it. And then at the end of both, I think at the end of 2 different episodes, I like yell to stop talking at the very end.
You don't seem mad, but I tell my wife Mel, I say, oh, he's a friend of the show. He was very animated today. That's how I describe it. Sometimes you're more animated than other days.
Well, pretty soon, in a couple episodes, we'll be recording. I'll be in the clear when it comes to school for the summer, so I will probably be a lot more relaxed. Tim is going to be so much more laid back than you've gotten to know him. I'm talking about myself in the third person. Please kill me.
It's a hectic time for me too. You might have been able to tell this from some of the videos that we produced. That I've spent the last 5 months of my life living in a 15-foot retro trailer that I refurbished. I got married in November, which Tim was the DJ at my wedding. DJ Tim, he's available. Boy. If anybody listening needs a DJ for their wedding,
it was
Tim
literally
is your
the
man.
worst thing of all time. I was furious with you for months afterwards.
Anyway, so I've been living on the road for the past 5 months, and just yesterday I got back into my hometown in Pennsylvania, and we have a cat, and my landlord at our old apartment that I still have all my furniture in that we were going to move back into. He had found out about the cat, hates cats, won't let us come back.
My.
Yeah, so I'm currently living in my my in-laws' driveway. So
Fun.
It's been an interesting time.
Well, we're what's interesting is, we've recorded every episode. You've been on the road. We're recording over the phone. We're still recording over the phone. I live in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is like about an hour and a half north of where you are. So in a couple weeks, we're going to finally record an episode of this show together in person. It's going to be a delight. And
it will be.
I mean, that's the big episode 1 special we've been hyping up. But it's going to be exciting because because I feel like we have a pretty good chemistry just because we've been friends for so long, so we're able to, even over the phone, kind of build that properly.
Yeah,
but
now that I get to see your smiling face,
people will be blown away by how much chemistry is unleashed once we record together.
And if our guest for that episode comes through, we're not giving any names. If it's the guest that I think we're gonna have, it will be a very animated episode for sure.
So yeah, we want to build up our guest roster a little bit. It's a hard podcast to get a guest for because it's a big commitment. You got to read a whole book. And,
we also live in Pennsylvania and don't have a bunch of comedians.
Oh, I'm certainly not. I'm talking about even for people that are just friends of ours that nobody has heard of, like the guests we've had so far.
Right? Because for Mel, whenever we had her on for the Defenders of the Dead and the Uncertain Path, like she had to read 4 books to get to there,
and then also read those. So yeah, and like that's why we had. I mean, we didn't wind up having a guest for Guardians of the Wills. We were going to have a guest. We may still have at some point in the future, but that's even just that is like a lot to ask of someone. You're asking them to record for a couple hours, but also read a book beforehand. And especially having guests for the series books is very difficult because you have, you got
to jump in.
You got to jump in, and it's hard to jump in.
So, but we're having a good time. We're enjoying doing this podcast.
Yeah,
I am at least.
Oh, absolutely. I love doing the podcast. It's just it's an extra stress on my life, and it'll be wonderful in the summer. I can't wait. But I thought there's interesting because we've recorded a couple since we started releasing the episodes, but a lot of the episodes were recorded before we even started releasing. This is I do want to say thank you to we have a very small but seemingly very devoted listenership, so I want to say thank you to those people. We have people that comment and like a lot of posts on Facebook and Instagram all the time, and so thank you. Love
hearing the feedback.
It's great because we
love hearing the theories on the Rise of Skywalker.
Oh yes, that was a funny one. I like that. That was a nice little exchange. You handle most of the social media. I shunted that off on you because I actually, in my past life, I've been involved in some other projects that have had sort of social media followings, and I've covered social media, and it was, and it's, it can be fun, but I also like, it's at its best right now. Just know that at this small level, it's like, oh, this is delightful. If we do grow in any real way, we're gonna get scumbags. Scumbags are coming. I can't wait till we deal with some scumbags, because that means that we have a real large listenership.
Oh, well, before we get into the book, do you have any more theories about Rise of Skywalker we can talk about? We'll try to shift this into Star Wars a little bit.
I mean, it's I'm kind of at the point where I'm resigned about the whole thing. Like because I think on our bonus episode, if you guys heard that, where we talked about Celebration, I talked about my nerves about the idea of the Emperor returning, like, in the flesh as a person. I actually kind of still just don't think that's actually going to be what happens. But, like, he'll be back in some other form. But I've kind of just resigned myself at this point. I've enjoyed some elements of these movies, not others, and I'm kind of just I'm cool with whatever at this point. It doesn't mean I'll like the movie no matter what, but I have mostly given up any attachment to this kind of stuff, like, which is funny because, like, when I was younger, this is kind of not Star Wars related, but Avengers Endgame's coming out the week we're recording this, and I was just thinking, like, I'm looking forward to it. I think I'll probably have a decent time with it, but
yeah,
I was just thinking, if I told my, like, 11, 12-year-old self that when you are in your late 20s, you'll have seen 22 interconnected Marvel Universe movies, and you will be ambivalent about them, I would have been shocked, because, like, I was obsessed with that stuff, like Marvel and Star Wars, and like, and I like the new Star Wars movies more than the Marvel movies in general, but it's sort of a similar feeling where it's like it's just weird. Like, it's a weird feeling. I think it might just be that I'm an adult and I care less, but part of it is just strange. It's just, like, I guess just the overabundance of it. You kind of like just don't care after a certain point. I still am excited, but with Star Wars. Star Wars is getting me pretty excited this year, though. There's just so much stuff coming out. We talked about most of it on the Celebration episode.
The Mandalorian is very exciting.
And we didn't talk about the Clone Wars stuff because of, potential spoilers for you because you're not caught up, but and also hadn't happened yet. But I will say the Clone Wars trailer is awesome. I'm very excited for that. But yeah, I don't know. And book stuff. They didn't announce a ton of book stuff at Celebration, so I'm curious about that, but we're gonna. There's definitely some material. I think there's something tying into Galaxy's Edge.
There's a couple books tying into Galaxy's Edge,
that actually fall under our purview. Yeah. So maybe around when that opens, we'll try to do one of those.
One of them is a dragon book, and they're actually called dragons, not dragons. So that's a major missed opportunity there, in my opinion.
Yeah, they could have brought dragons in from Legends. They could have thrown it up. But...
you mentioned your 7 to 10-year-old self. I was just thinking the other day. I remember in middle school we had like a computer class, and we had to make a PowerPoint presentation, and it could be about like anything at all. It just had to have like so many slides and so many lines per slide. And I remember making a PowerPoint about like movies that were coming out at the time.
Okay.
And movies that I were excited for. So I remember Looney Tunes being back in action being on that list.
Well, that's a good movie right there.
It is.
Joe Dante is my king.
But I remember having Batman versus Superman on there.
They announced that back around that time.
Yeah, and I remember like having a whole slide about it, and then I was just like thinking like, oh man, I was so excited when that got announced. And then for the movie, if I could go back and tell myself, yeah, that movie happens, and it's not good. It's really bad. Don't be excited for it. Like, how different would I be?
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, it's weird because, like, we're from, kind of our movie fandom and that kind of stuff kind of incubated in those early days of, like, the movie internet, which, a lot of it you go back and you're like, ooh, that's gross, but, like,
yeah.
But it is also kind of, it was interesting because, it was crazy because, like, people like us never had access to, like, that much industry news, and now it's just so standard. So you like know about these projects that are in development that were probably never even close to happening, like the original whatever that version of Batman versus Superman was in 2003.
Yeah, I can't even remember who was even attached to that. Like,
I don't remember. I mean, and then of course there's like later on the George Miller Justice League and all that stuff, but it's wild. Like I don't know. I'm in some ways, I have some nostalgia for that time, but in other ways, it's just like now I just ignore all movie news and I feel great. I just am like, oh, what's coming out in the next couple months? I'll look at the release schedule. I'll be like, oh, I like that director. I like that actor. Whatever. Maybe I'll see that. That's it.
Yeah, I need to get away from that. So many I need to find, I think, like a new movie website because Slash Film has gone downhill. That's the one I check every day. Before that,
They're all right. I don't mind them.
when I was a kid, I daily checked comingsoon.net. Do you remember Coming Soon? I remember they had animated GIFs like in the corner that I thought were just delightful. I remember stealing those and putting them in my PowerPoint.
That was kind of taken from like Ain't It Cool, wasn't that? Was also similar GIFs in the corner. I hated that place always. I always hated Ain't It Cool, but
it never seemed cool to me. It always seemed like it always had a lame look to it.
Oh, I hated the like barf look.
Yeah,
there's a lot of reasons to not like Ain't It Cool these days, but like even back before we knew anything about Mr. Knowles, it was just bad.
Well, on that note,
let's go back to that time. This book, I believe, was published in the year 2000, the height of Ain't It Cool news. And when we come back, we're going to talk about book number 7 in the Jedi Apprentice series, The Captive Temple. Stay tuned.
In the galactic justice system, Jedi-related crimes are considered especially heinous. In the Jedi Temple, the Masters who investigate these crimes are members of an elite squad known as the Jedi Temple Unit. These are their stories.
Yoda, this is... I see. Jin! Tall! My office! Receive new information I have. Much more to this case there is. An old partner will help.
Hello again, everyone. This a joke? You really expect us to trust this kid after he risked our lives for some 18 and under party on Melita Dawn?
Young our perp is. Much insight Obi-Wan can give us, I think.
Master Yoda is right. The boy's perspective can only help us at this point.
Obi-Wan. Yes, Master. You still have a lot to prove. Welcome to the team.
Now, let's fill you in on how we're gonna get this creep off the streets.
Actually, I came up with a plan. If we...
Master Windu?
I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi.
Everybody strap in! We're about to open some fucking windows.
Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here with Levi Peretic once again to discuss the Jedi Apprentice series. We're back! Jude Watson is back! Is the Captive Temple, number 7. The last book, it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
It sure did, because there was an assassination attempt on Yoda's life, and Qui-Gonn and Obi-Wan were still on Melita Dawn. They had just brought peace to a centuries-old war on Melita Dawn, between the Melita and the Dawn. And they were, I don't want to say they were reveling in their victory, but their victory was eclipsed by this assassination attempt on Master Yoda.
So yeah, Obi-Wan was going to go home anyway, but was going to go back.
And but Obi-Wan, he's got his own, he's still on an uncertain path.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his friend Sarasi just died still.
Yep.
And he's
not sure. He's not sure if he's a Jedi. He's definitely not Qui-Gonn's Padawan at the moment. So there's a lot going on in this.
Yeah, this is and it's interesting because we had Mel on for 2 episodes, and this kind of is actually really the completion of that story to some degree.
Yeah,
at least emotionally. This book, going back, we're spending some time at the Jedi Temple with some old friends and some new friends. It's good stuff. So strap on in. We're just gonna jump right in. There's nothing to talk about with Jude this week, right? Any new Jude information?
She has another name that she goes by these days. It's I believe it's Judy Blundell. No, Judy Blundell, I believe it is. And so if you want to, she has a Twitter, so look her up, send her some love, tell her how much you love her Star Wars writing.
Did she get married or is it the other way around?
I think it's just she has a couple different writing like pen names.
Okay.
So like the 39 Steps is under Jude Watson, but she has this other series like How to Get Away with something, I don't know, like robbery or something like that. It's like her own series, but she's been doing that under Judy Blundell.
That might be her real name then. Like her original material, maybe she does under her real name and licensed stuff. Because she didn't create the 39 Steps either, I don't think.
No. Apparently that's like handed off to like different authors, but I know she's like done a couple of them. Also, too, if you may have seen this on Instagram on a Watson Wednesday, that it apparently I checked her Wikipedia page for just a second, and it said she had died in Taiwan. No death day. I googled this, could not confirm that she was dead. Why somebody would go into her Wikipedia page and deface it with something like her death is beyond me. But that's the only Jude news I got today.
She's tweeted since then, I hope.
See, I just found her Twitter, so I made a plea to the Del Rey Star Wars page to re-release Jedi Apprentice as like a collection.
Yeah.
By plea, I just tweeted at them, but I made sure I tagged her in it. But maybe all the fans at home should do the same. Also, in the same breath, though, I don't know if I should be tweeting Del Rey or if I should be tweeting Scholastic.
Well, Scholastic no longer has a Star Wars license. Disney puts the young readers' books out by themselves. So Disney Press, I think, is who you want to be looking at.
Okay, I will look into that then. So, anyway, Chapter 1, Obi and the QG go to the Jedi Temple. They were meeting with the Jedi Council, and Obi-Wan is nervous because he doesn't know if they're going to take him back for all the shit he pulled on Melita Dan. So he walks in, they walk in, and first person he catches a glimpse of is Yoda. And him and Yoda lock eyes for a moment. And then Yoda shifts his gaze to Qui-Gonn, and the look that Yoda gives Obi-Wan is not a reassuring one. There's no answers in the look. Also in this moment, too, on the cover of this book is the puppet Yoda from Episode 1, not the CGI Yoda. And as I was imagining the scene in my head, I imagined it twice with CG Yoda, which I was fine with, but then I imagined it as puppet Yoda, and it just kind of irked me a little bit. His eyes are a little lifeless.
I remember when Lucas replaced the. Actually, you know what? We'll talk about the changes made to Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, on our special in a couple weeks. Continue.
Okay, sounds good. Continuing. So they address Qui-Gonn. And basically, they tell Mace Windu tells Qui-Gonn all about the assassination attempt on Yoda's life. Apparently, Yoda was doing his usual morning routine, which involves meditating in the Room of 1,000 Fountains. And he was walking across a bridge in the Room of 1,000 Fountains. And he sensed the dark side for a moment, and then kabam, the bridge he was standing on blew up, but he was able to jump out of the way in time. What they do know is that Bruck Chun is still in the temple somewhere. If you remember in the last book, Tal and Qui-Gonn found out that he was the one stealing items around the temple, along with a unknown intruder, and he escaped their capture, but they're pretty sure he's still there with the intruder. They don't know where he is. But one thing these two have been doing is they've been screwing with the lights and the AC. So it's really hot in the council chambers at the moment. So, let's see here. And they left a new note.
Oh, that's a
and
note.
This is on page. This is a good note, and I'm going to have you read it, Tim. It's on page 5.
Meditate on this, masters. Next time, I will not fail.
I wonder who that could be. Anyway, so the council now turns to Obi-Wan, and they ask him, say, hey, what do you know about Bruck Chun? And he's like, well, we weren't friends. I can't tell you a whole lot. And he knows in this moment he has let the council down. That's the whole reason he's even there right now, is because they needed info on Bruck. And he tries to, like, reel it back, sidestep, like, hoping, like, well, I can be of some help, you know? And on page 8 and 9, they kind of rip him to shreds here. Mace Windu's sharp gaze cut him like ice. I think the Jedi can manage to solve this crisis without that kind help from you. Of course, Obi-Wan said, but I wish to tell the Jedi Masters that I feel genuine remorse for my decision. I felt it was right at the time, but I've come to see how it was wrong. I want nothing more to have back what I once had. I want to be a Padawan. I want to be a Jedi. Have again what you had you cannot, Yoda said. Different you are, Different as Qui-gonn, Every moment makes you so. Every decision cost it has. Ki-Adi-Mundi spoke up. Obi-Wan, you have violated not only the trust of Qui-Gonn, but the trust of the Council. You seem not to recognize this. But I do, Obi-Wan exclaimed. I take responsibility for it, and I'm sorry. You are 13 years old, Obi-Wan. You are not a child, Mace Windu said with a frown. Why don't you speak like one? So, this is a harsh cutting down of Obi-Wan. So what they tell him is that his path is unclear, and he needs to just kind of hang out and wait for the time being until they decide what they're going to do with him.
So yeah, they want him to return to his old quarters. He leaves the Jedi Council chamber and immediately runs into Bant, his friend from the first book. Well, that was the last time we saw them together, but she, of course, played a pretty big role in the last book on the Qui-Gonn side of things. She's a Mon Cala girl, a couple years younger than Obi-Wan. But they were like best friends, and if you remember, they exchanged Yoda pleasantries at the end of the first book, or when Obi-Wan left, I should say. So anyway, she's happy to see him. Like, unlike the Council, seems happy to see him. They hug and they head down to the kind of that lake from the last book that's like in kind of that indoor lake, basically, where she likes to swim, and they talk about Obi-Wan's dilemma. You know, Bant reassures him that, you know, the Council, they need time to see that his recommitment to the Order is real, you know, and Obi-Wan, like, he's frustrated by this, angry about it, but, you know, Bant's words do ultimately kind of offer him some sort of comfort, you know, and Bant kind of catches him up with what's been going on with her. She's like, you know, Yoda believes in her and says that at age 11, very young, she's ready to be a Padawan. This obviously makes Obi-Wan a little bit jealous, which is a factor going later on in this book. But she's very advanced, basically. And so their friend, Garen Mulm, who, if you remember, is their human friend from the first book, he's apparently a very skilled pilot, and he's being prepared to fly missions for the Order. And their other friend, Reeft, who, if you recall, is a Dracelian, he's already a Padawan. He's been taken by Master Bin Ibis and is off on his first mission. And Obi-Wan, he feels kind of inadequate in the face of all this. He's like, all these people who I became a Padawan before any of them, and like I screwed it up, and I'm back now, and everyone's lapping me. Basically, is how he feels. And then the kind of false sky above the lake kind of blinks off, and Bant sees like, oh, the horizontal turbo lift is crashing. So this basically an elevator is kind of crashing through the sky, the fake sky of this environment.
So this turbo lift is it crashes and it's hanging on by a thread, and Obi-Wan thinks maybe the engines have failed, but he doesn't have a comm because it got damaged on Melita Dawn. So Bant runs to go get help, And Obi-Wan, since the lift connects to the nursery, believes that the lift might be full of children. So he scales up a catwalk, and he goes to the turbo lift tube. He pulls out his lightsaber, he cuts a hole in it. Then he scales the tube up to the lift. And, of course, there's 10 children inside, along with their caretaker. And they say to him that the hatch isn't working and the comm is out on it too. So he cuts a hole in the side of that, and he's worried that this thing might go down at any minute. So they don't want to move too much. So he starts pulling the children out one by one. So he takes the first child, a very young girl. All the children are very calm thanks to their force training. And He takes the first girl out, and he gets back to the catwalk, and Qui-Gonn is there. He's already waiting, and Qui-Gonn says, hand me the children. The council is below, and they are all using the Force to hold the thing into place. So Obi-Wan has to keep shimmying up this tube, grab a child, come back down, hand him to Qui-Gonn. He rescues the children. Everybody's safe. And it's at that moment that the council commends Bant, that she acted so quickly, and that even though she couldn't find help, she ran straight to the council chambers to tell the council themselves that something was wrong. They commend the caretaker of the children for having kept the children calm during this whole terrifying ordeal. However, Mace Windu cuts Obi-Wan down, and they scold him for acting independently and for acting alone and impulsively. He took a big risk, because if the thing had fallen, it could have been on him. And everybody walks away from Obi-Wan at this point. It's like everybody turns their back on him and they walk away. And when they walk away, Qui-Gon puts his hand on Bant's shoulder and basically ushers her away as well.
And Obi-Wan is burning with jealousy, because he's like, she's ready to take a master, and Qui-Gon hasn't committed to taking me back yet, so he's... Oh. Anyway, so Qui-Gon, though, he feels the council's being too harsh with Obi-Wan. He understands their motives. He's that if he, by kind of revealing where his failings are, that it allows him to reflect, because the failings that they talk about, being too impulsive and everything, is what led him into problems on Belita Dawn. So, he understands the motives, but he feels like they're being too harsh, and he wants to make that clear to Obi-Wan, but he's not sure how. He's very hesitant. And Qui-Gon, he goes back and he meets with Yoda privately, and Yoda tells him, the lift accident, it's been confirmed to be a sabotage by Miro Darun, who is the tech guy, basically, at the temple. That there's no way it was just an accident. It was sabotaged. And the student records... and Qui-Gon... Qui-Gon accounts for all the stolen items that from the last book. If you remember, there were 4 big stolen items. There was a toolbox, a master's robe, student records, and the kind of a student sports kit, like a sport kit for...
Oh, and don't forget about the healing crystals of fire.
Of course, the healing crystals of fire, but Qui-Gon's kind of accounted for why those items were stolen so far. Like the toolbox was to dismantle lift engines and create chaos, and the Master's Robe is so you could move unseen throughout the temple, hide themselves, and the student records were to hide... the only student records that were stolen were, I think it was A through H, which includes Brooke Chun. So that's to maybe throw people off the scent of Brooke Chun. And he's still not sure about that sports kit. He's not sure about that. Yoda, he informs Qui-Gon that the temple is currently holding a large shipment of Vertex, which is a valuable mineral used as currency on some worlds instead of credits. There's a dispute between 2 planets over this shipment, and during the negotiations between the 2 planets, they've asked the temple to keep the shipment there as on a neutral site. But if the unrest within the temple were to kind of get out into the galaxy, it could spark kind of a large-scale war between these two planets that also have many allies that would kind of join in the fight. At this point, Obi-Wan finally kind of comes up, and it's on page 32.
Okay.
Yeah, on page 32, Yoda blinked at him. And Obi-Wan? The Council has ordered Obi-Wan to stay out of this, Qui-Gonn answered, surprised. Predict I do that the boy will find a way to offer his help again, Yoda said. And should I refuse? Yoda waved an arm. Directly involved the boy should not be, but shut him out. I would not. So, my Grover impression. But anyway, and so that's the thing. Like, Qui-Gon is being asked by Yoda to investigate, fill in the blanks with Bruck Chun. Because they don't have access to his records and all this stuff. So, as Qui-Gon leaves, though, he's leaving Yoda's office, and he remembers a mission he went on from years ago. And this is on page 33. And I'll just read this part, because this is important. Qui-Gon stopped, his gaze on the splintered bridge, his thoughts suddenly in the past. Years ago, he had a mission to stop a tyrant from taking over a world in the Outer Rim. The tyrant's strategy was based on a simple equation. Disruption plus demoralization plus distraction equals devastation.
Devastation.
The 4 Ds, man!
The equation of evil.
I just hit my mic. So, anyway, yeah, something, and he realized that the whoever is behind all these attacks is using a similar pattern. They're confusing everyone with the stealing, and then demoralization, attacking Yoda. It all works out. This is a little bit wonky, I gotta say.
It all fits the equation.
It all fits in the equation. That's what D plus D plus D equals D.
Equals D.
So, something's amiss. We know that. And by the way, it's a mission he took years ago. Who would know about it?
So, back to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan decides he needs a new comlink. So he's going to go see the tech guru Miro to help him out with that. And as he's heading into Miro's office, he sees this girl, Siri, or Suri. I'll call her Suri. And
Siri.
Siri. Okay, Siri. So he sees Siri, and Siri he knows was a buddy of Bruck Chun. They sat at the at the lunch table together, and he decides, well, maybe I can ask her about Bruck. And they have an interesting exchange here. He mentions that she has always taken her studies very seriously, never allowing herself to get in on the fun. So here's a little section of this. Actually, it's a big section of this on page 36, 37, and 38. She cuts them down. A recurring theme in this book of Obi-Wan just being cut down. Privately, Obi-Wan had always thought her as a little too focused. She never seemed to relax or join in jokes and funs that the other students enjoyed in their downtime. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Suri said flatly. I heard you were back. She took a bite of fruit. Suri, you were a friend of Bruck's, Obi-Wan said urgently. Did you notice any signs of anger or rebellion in the past few months, or anything out of the ordinary? Suri chewed, staring at him, not answering. Obi-Wan shifted uncomfortably. He realized too late that these days being a friend of Brock's was not actually a benefit around the temple. He had blurted out a question without thinking, too eager for answers, too mindful of the time pressure. He supposed he should have phrased the question a little bit more diplomatically. While he was trying to think of a better opening, Suri swallowed. She spun the muja fruit in her hand. Muha, that's a good one. I like this. I'd eat muha fruit. In her hand, searching for her next place to bite. "What is it to you?" she asked. Her rudeness surprised him, as Obi-Wan struggled not to snap back. "I want to help Obi-Wan find Brock and the intruder," he began patiently. "Wait a second. I thought Qui-Gonn dumped you. I thought you dumped the Jedi." Annoyance filled Obi-Wan. "I didn't dump the Jedi," he said irritably. "And as for Qui-Gonn, we... Obi-Wan stopped. He didn't owe Siri an explanation. She stood there chewing on her fruit, staring at him as if he was a lab experiment. "You shouldn't listen to gossip," he told her. "So why would you want me to gossip about Brock?" Siri shot back coolly. She took another bite of her muha. Fuming, Obi-Wan took a breath. The interview wasn't going well, that's for sure. "The temple is under siege," he said, struggling to keep his voice even. "I think you'd want to help." Siri's cheeks flushed. "I don't have to help you, Obi-Wan. You're not even a Jedi. But for your information, I wasn't Brock's friend. He just used to hang around trying to copy my lightsaber moves. He knew I was a better fighter than he was. So does the rest of the class. I thought he was a bore. He was always trying to impress me. That sums up, I guess, our supposed relationship. All right." "All right," Obi-Wan said, "but if you think of anything, and another thing," Suri interrupted, her eyes shooting sparks at him. "I do care about the temple. You're the one who left the temple. When you did that, you cast doubt on the commitment of all Padawans, past, present, and future. You made all the Jedi Knights question whether we're as committed as we should be. You're almost as bad as Brock." Whew.
That is very harsh accent on your part also.
It wasn't as flatly as I think it was described in the book. But Obi-Wan has had a rough time since he's come back to the temple. Not the warm welcome back Cotter he was probably hoping for. But he's had people have been kind of a little rough on him. I guess it's deservedly so.
To some degree. I mean, also remember, Obi-Wan's kind of visibly upset at this point, and Siri begins to kind of apologize, but he cuts her off and tells her, "You know what, if you can think of anything else, just tell Qui-Gonn. Go find Qui-Gonn."
Yep.
So, and then, meanwhile, Qui-Gonn, he's actually already there at Miro's place, the tech guy, talking about kind of the technical aspects of the sabotage attempt, when Obi-Wan shows up. And Qui-Gon, he acknowledges that he's there, but doesn't address him directly. But he keeps talking openly about the investigation to maybe try to keep Obi-Wan there, not have him rush off. And he continues his conversation. And Miro, by the way, he's a tall alien from Patan. So that's interesting. Miro's frustrated about the sabotage. It's very intricate. And it kind of continues to confirm Qui-Gon's suspicions, which he had first in the last book, but it is the first time he's voiced them aloud. It's Xanatos. Xanatos himself may be behind this operation, and Obi-Wan is very startled by this. Miro, though, he's like, "Yeah, Xanatos. He was in the year behind me at the temple, and he was the only student who had a better understanding of technology than him." So Xanatos, also Qui-Gon thinks back, and he's like, "Xanatos was my apprentice when the D equation was revealed to us. When that mission took place.
The D equation of evil.
The equation of evil. When that was revealed to us, he was my apprentice." And so, despite the council's orders to kind of be a little bit aloof with Obi-Wan, he directly looks at Obi-Wan. He's like, I need your help.
So the QG and Obi-Wan go to Tull's office, and Obi-Wan's a little concerned about how she's going to react to him, but she's happy to see him. She doesn't blame him for what went down on Melita Dawn, so he's relieved by that. So far, of all the people he's interacted with, only 2 people have treated him nice so far today. Qui-Gonn explains his Xanatos theory, and Tull is like, hang on, buddy. This is a little bit of a logic jump here. And but then Siri shows up at the office because Obi-Wan told her if she thought of anything to go to Qui-Gon. And she recalls a couple months back she had a weird conversation with Bruck where he started boasting about his dad. And he was talking about how great his dad is and how now his dad is a very wealthy man on his home planet. And Qui-Gon says, well, where's his home planet? And she says, Telos, the home planet of Xanatos. And at that moment, Tull is like, oh, well, shit, you're right, Qui-Gon. Like, so, Qui-Gon, he says, me and Obi-Wan, we are going to go search the tunnels, and he orders Tull to search for records of the Off-World Mining Corporation and all their dealings. But the way he says this, he notices that he said this kind of mean, not necessarily meanly, but Tull is a little sad that she can't go along on the adventure as well, and it would be hard for her to go on the adventure, being the fact that she's blind and she's walking around through these tunnels. And this is Qui-Gon. He quietly walks over to his desk and he says, "Tull, the right information can save a mission more surely than a battle. It'll be a challenge," he said. "Whatever clues there are will be buried. Off-world is made up of a pyramid of false companies, phony titles. Their assets are carefully hidden. No one knows where their headquarters are." Tull's eyes seemed to glow. "No one so far," she said. Obi-Wan noted her new determination. Qui-Gon had done this. He had not dealt on her dissatisfaction. He had acknowledged it compassionately and then flung out a challenge to engage her. "I have so much to learn from him," Obi-Wan thought. "It's not only about battles and strategies and the Force. It's about heart." That's I'd like to think of that when Qui-Gon went over there. He was being a little flirtatious.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. I hope we see more of Tull.
Yes, but then they're about to leave, and the door opens, and it's Bant, and Bant says she knows where the intruder and Bruck Chun are hiding.
Oh boy.
Oh, Xanatos. Not just the intruder, Xanatos.
Yeah, Xanatos and Bruck Chun. I do remember also 2J, a very annoying droid from the previous book that Yoda provided to Tull to help her with adjust that blind life.
He shows up right before Bant does.
Yeah, it shows up, and so that's interesting. Anyway, so Bant, she's realized all the attacks and incidents that happen near water, like the fountains or a waterfall or something like that, and she knows that all the water bodies in the temple are connected by an intricate system of water tunnels, because even though she's not supposed to, sometimes when she's late for class or something, she'll swim through one of those tunnels to get to class. And Qui-Gon's like, it's no big deal. I'm not one of those council squares. And so, she believes this is how Xanatos and Bruck have been moving so freely throughout the temple. And Qui-Gon praises her, and of course Obi-Wan gets jealous again. He's just like, is he grooming her to be his next apprentice and leave me in the dust? And so the three of them, they enter the tunnels, and they're led by Bant, who knows where she's going. They look through the tunnels. They don't find anything specific in the actual tunnels, but Qui-Gon, he notices an access panel, and he's like, oh, let's check that out. And so they go in, and they find a platform that's suspended above the water of the purification tank. And they also see on the on this platform is the stolen toolkit from the previous book. So it's like, this is something, this is big. And Obi-Wan, he feels some sort of dark presence. He's like, uh-oh. And the water below them parts. And up from below rises Xanatos.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon activate their lightsabers, but Xanatos waits, suspending himself in the water from the waist down, not kicking or fluttering his feet, but using the Force. And he has an exchange with Qui-Gon here. Tim, I'm going to have you read. It's the fourth paragraph, starting on page 58, starting with the first Xanatos line.
All right. It took longer than even I imagined for you to figure out it was me, he called mockingly to Qui-Gon. That noble head of yours can be so thick. Foolishly, I continue to give you credit for some intelligence.
Qui-Gon stood easily, his lightsaber activated, but he held it loosely at his side. He did not appear to be in attack position, but Obi-Wan knew his fighting style well. If Xanatos were to spring, Qui-Gon only had to shift slightly in order to meet his attack. Qui-Gon didn't answer Xanatos. His face was sturdy in composure. He didn't appear to have had heard Xanatos at all. Obi-Wan knew they could not attack while Xanatos remained in the water. If they jumped after him, their lightsabers would short out, and the activated lasers their lightsabers would short out if the activated lasers came in contact with water. Xanatos knew it too. Perhaps that's why he only taunted Qui-Gon, goading him to attack.
Goading him.
Goading. Okay. Goading him to attack.
You don't even answer me, he called, still holding a grudge. What a hard heart you have, Qui-Gon.
I wasn't aware that we were having a conversation, Qui-Gon answered. He moved forward a step. That was always the way with you, Xanatos. You preferred the sound of your own voice. Destroyed! Crushed! Oh, man. Could love that.
He just goes in on him. He's just like, I'm done with you, Xanatos.
So Xanatos leaps out of the water. This pisses him off. He goes immediately for the QG. And as he does this, Bantu's still with them. She's unarmed. She jumps in the water. She goes for help. The three of them battle fiercely. Xanatos is strong, but he easily is maneuvered down a narrow staircase. Obi-Wan realizes that if they can get him to slip and fall into the water, his lightsaber will short out. The Force pulsates between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. They're in sync. Suddenly there's a roar, and a huge wave of water comes rushing at them. Obi and Qui-Gon jump, while Xanatos is washed away. Obi-Wan says, he'll drown, but Qui-Gon is doubtful.
So, when the chamber drains completely, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they follow Xanatos' trail, and they discover a speeder he may use to leave the temple. And when Bant returns with temple security, they have the security team take the speeder, thus trapping Xanatos in the temple. And Qui-Gon, he compliments Bant again. Obi-Wan gets jealous again. And Qui-Gon, he sends her to give Tal an update on what's been happening. And Obi-Wan, he suspects that Xanatos might have been tipped off about their investigation from some sort of spy. And so, which is why he showed up at the exact same time as them. And Qui-Gon says it's out of the question, because the only two people that knew about their plan were Bant and Tal, and he says they are above suspicion. So on page 66 and 67, they have this little spat here, and I'll read Qui-Gon, and you can be Obi-Wan.
Okay.
Start there on the third paragraph of page 66.
All right, so is that Qui-Gon frowned?
I think there could be a spy.
I think there could be a spy in the temple, Obi-Wan said slowly, turning back to Qui-Gon. Xanatos has planted someone there, warning him of our next move. Why else would he have come here with a satchel on his back?
Many reasons, I suppose, Qui-Gon said.
And remember that he said that you had to rely on children to tell him that he was using the tunnels. How did he know that Ben tipped you off?
Qui-Gon frowned. I'm not sure about this, Obi-Wan. The only ones who knew we were searching the water tunnels were Bant and Tal. They are both completely above suspicion. Bant would never do anything to compromise the security of the temple.
Stung by how quickly Qui-Gon had leaped to Bant's defense, Obi-Wan blurted out, "And what about Tal? Do you trust her so well?"
With my life, Qui-Gon answered shortly.
"But you haven't seen her in years," Obi-Wan pointed out. "What if Xanatos somehow got to her somehow?"
No, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon said curtly. You were wrong. I am used to betrayal. I know exactly what it looks like. He gave Obi-Wan a hard look and turned away.
Obi-Wan felt a stab of pain. He knew Qui-Gon was talking about him.
Crush!
Destroyed.
Obi-Wan is just getting schooled in this book. He's done.
You know what's interesting? What's interesting about this is the same level of crushing that he does to Anakin 24/7. So it's fun to see it on the other side. Qui-Gon knows he just said some hurtful shit. It just came out. He didn't mean to be so darn harsh. He reflects on how it's hard for him to trust people. But once someone earns his trust, they have it forever, and it's very difficult to break. Obi-Wan broke it, and now Qui-Gon doesn't know if it can be attained again. You know, Qui-Gon wants to sit and speak to Obi-Wan, but he just doesn't have the right words yet. And in this moment, Qui-Gon has a very keen sense of self-awareness. He has this self-reflection here about how he knows he has a hard time trusting people. He knows that he said some hurtful shit. He knows he hurt Tal's feelings earlier. And he works to amend this kind of thing. You know, he acts a certain way, but he doesn't want to kind of thing. So at least he's got, you know, some existentialism to him. However, he does readdress this Obi-Wan's theory of a rat, because even though he's already shot it down, it's very probable. Then all of a sudden, all of the lights dim, and Tal calms them and says there have been some developments. So they go back to Tal's office, and when they get there, apparently Miro had already phoned. All of the lights in the temple are at half power. Obviously, Xanatos is trying to sneak around, and Tal makes like a quip to Qui-Gon and says, like, see, now we're about even now, commenting on like how she's blind and the lights are turned off. And Qui-Gon says, not quite, you're still wiser than me. Oh. Again, that flirtatious Qui-Gon.
Oh, man.
They fill her in on what happened with Xanatos, and then she fills them in about what she found out about Offworld. Offworld is apparently in dire financial trouble.
So I want to make something clear here. This is in chapter 11, and this is actually the bankruptcy chapter. It's... Sorry.
So, Tal hands... here's another funny moment. Tal hands... Qui-Gon financial reports. She printed them off and she hands them to him, and he looks at them and he says, you're going to have to tell me. You know I'm no good at galactic finance.
They are an old married couple. I want them to be together.
I know. So Xanatos' money woes are bad, and so bad that he's been pumping money out of the Telos treasury, and he's been pumping so much money out, the planet is nearly broke. So suddenly, it clicks. Xanatos always has a second motive. He's a complicated villain. He's not one-dimensional. The vertex, the very valuable vertex that is being stored in the temple. Xanatos may be planning on destroying the temple and running away with a fortune. Then 2J enters, and it clicks again. The light bulbs are going off left and right, and apparently all they had to do was turn off the lights. The damn droid is the spy. So he says to Tall, he's got to think fast because he can't say this shit aloud. So he says to Tall, could you tell 2J to go fetch Bant? We need to talk to her. She does this, and 2J leaves, and Qui-Gon fills her in on his line of thinking, and they devise a plot to shut down the droid inconspicuously. So the droid walks in, because she couldn't find Bant, and Tall does this whole ruse where she like clumsily knocks over her lunch, and 2J of course is like, oh no, in this totally frantic protocol droid vibe, and Tall gets mad at the droid and she shuts her down. So when they shut her down, they start to search the droid's body and they find a transmitter on the hip. Tall thinks this is bad news for them, but Qui-Gon knows this is ideal for them because now they can set a trap.
So, Qui-Gon, he sends Obi-Wan to the senior student's quarters to find a student roughly the same height and build as him. And Obi-Wan goes immediately, and on his way he's like, I know, it'll be Garen Moan, my friend. He's my man. And he runs into Bant, who volunteers to help in any way she can. She's not volunteering for this job specifically. She's just volunteering to help in any way she can. And Obi-Wan, he rudely rebuffs her, very rudely. He tells her basically that she's thirsty for Qui-Gon's mastership and that get out of here. Like, I'm his apprentice. Get out of my territory. And so he grabs Garen, who's like, what was that? You were being a total dick to her for no reason. He's like, Qui-Gon needs her help. He's like, I'll come, but you're an asshole, basically. And they head back to Tall's quarters. And Obi-Wan immediately regrets how he treated Bant. It's very unbecoming of a Jedi, which he wants to become a Jedi again. And but he's like, I'll have to. It kind of reflects sort of what Qui-Gon was feeling a little bit earlier. He's like, I'll have to deal with that later. Like, I need to but he knows what he did was wrong. He automatically feels some guilt about it. But anyway, so when Obi-Wan and Garen get back to Tall's quarters, they find a tall Jedi from behind. Obi-Wan assumes it's Qui-Gon. He says, hey, Qui-Gon, and it's actually Ali Alan, the caretaker of the children from the elevator. And Qui-Gon shows up right behind him and explains his plan. He's going to have Ali Alan and Garen pose as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in their robes near 2J with a voice track that they will record in order to lure Xanatos into different directions. But right at this moment when he's starting to explain the plan, Tall comes out and says, Bant has gone missing. And good one, Obi-Wan, you asshole. She was supposed to stay in her quarters, and Obi-Wan made her sad, so she went off on her own, and she's missing. And then it gets even more serious when Qui-Gon gets a call on his comlink from Xanatos. And
you should read this. Just
okay.
read, because anytime Xanatos talks, we're on page 80. So
all right.
We'll start at just then. Qui-Gon's comlink signaled. He activated it.
What a pleasure to greet you again, Qui-Gon. Everyone
froze.
Let's start again.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
All right, okay. What a pleasure to greet you again, Qui-Gon. Everyone froze. The mockery that ran through the deep voice alerted even Ali Alan and Garen that this was Xanatos.
What do you want? Qui-Gon asked tersely.
My transport, Xanatos answered smoothly. Fully fueled on the spaceport landing platform, and no one around to follow me.
Why should I give this to you? Qui-Gon asked scornfully.
An interesting question. Perhaps because I have bumped into a friend of yours in the water tunnel. I think it might be a good idea if the fish girl stays with me for a while. Unless you object.
It took a moment. No more. For Obi-Wan to realize who Xanatos meant. Bant. He had kidnapped Bant. Qui-Gon squeezed his comlink so hard that Obi-Wan was surprised it didn't shatter. Tal grabbed the door frame. Garen took a step forward, as if he could reach through the comlink and grapple Xanatos. Only Obi-Wan did not move. His blood had turned to ice. His muscles turned to stone.
So, do we have a deal?
Xanatos asked.
My transport, and I send the girl back to you. I'll give you 15 minutes. That's all.
How do I know you have Bant? Qui-Gon asked. Seconds later, a firm, high voice came over the comlink.
Qui-Gon! Qui-Gon! Don't do it! I'm fine! I don't want you to!
Bant's voice was cut off abruptly, and the comlink went dead.
Damn. Very serious stuff.
The stakes have never been higher. The Vertex, the Temple, Yoda's life, Bant. Whew.
So,
Anyway, Obi-Wan is frozen. Qui-Gon and Tal, they go into Tal's office, they're discussing something, and Obi-Wan is frozen, and because Bant ran away because of him, and now she may die, and this, of course, triggers thoughts of Sarasi, and he's so fearful that he may lose someone else close to him. His legs are shaking, he's so scared. And then Qui-Gon walks in, and Obi-Wan is trying really hard to be strong, act like there's nothing wrong, but he can't. The second he looks up at Qui-Gon, like he just can't even compose his face. And Qui-Gon kneels before him, and this is some very deep stuff that Qui-Gon says here. We're on page 84, and do you want to read a little bit of this?
Sure.
You can be Qui-Gon, just start at, "It's all right, Obi-Wan."
It's all right, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon said gently. I understand.
Obi-Wan shook his head. Qui-Gon could not possibly understand.
Never fear your feelings, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon said. They can guide you if you control them.
I can't. Obi-Wan's forced the words out. He hated to admit his weakness to Qui-Gon, but he could not lie.
Yes, you can, Qui-Gon said with the same gentleness. I know you can. You are a Jedi. You will focus. You will reach your calm center. Do not try to tamp down the fear. Do not let it grip you. If you let it move through you, it will leave you. Breathe.
Obi-Wan breathed. A tiny part of the panic loosened its grip. He breathed again and felt the fear rise. This time he did not battle it. He pictured it rising on his breath, leaving his body. His muscles loosened slightly.
We will rescue Bant, Qui-Gon continued. We will defeat Xanatos. We will bring him down.
The panic was lessening, but not the shame. I hurt her. The words were jerky, forced out, a hiccup of air. I made her run away.
Ah, Qui-Gon paused. Did you send her to Xanatos? Speaking sharply to a friend is wrong, Obi-Wan. It is cause for an apology, but it is not cause to be responsible for whatever happens afterward. Bant knows that. Her kidnapping is not your fault, and she would be the first to say so. She knows she should not use the water tunnels alone.
Obi-Wan kept his eyes on the floor. He grabbed onto Qui-Gon's calmness like a raft. He strove to find it within himself. He knew that Qui-Gon was frantic to find Bant, was full of anxiety to rid the temple of Xanatos, yet Qui-Gon crouched next to him, perfectly willing to wait out his panic.
You want to return to the Jedi, Qui-Gon continued. Now be a Jedi. This is the moment. This is exactly the moment when you must. The very worst time is the time you must follow the code. Cast away your doubt. Let the Force flow through you.
Obi-Wan lifted his head and met Qui-Gon's steady gaze. Now he could feel the Force move between them, gather itself, surround them. He knew that together they could defeat Xanatos. He was able to cast doubt aside and believe. Qui-Gon saw the change in his face.
Are you ready?
Obi-Wan nodded.
Then come, Qui-Gon stood. Obi-Wan found that his legs moved easily. The The strange paralysis was gone.
What are we going to do? Obi-Wan asked.
When your enemy strikes unexpectedly, things change, Qui-Gonn said. But if your plan is good, there is no reason to abandon it. That's a beautiful scene. It's
very, very well written.
And I like these moments in these books because you have there's some of them in the movies, but you get a lot of them here where it's not so much he's trying to get him to be a good Jedi or whatever. It's just he's helping him through what's obviously the first major crisis of his life, which is his grief over his dead friend. He just participated in this giant war, and now another friend of his is kidnapped. So he's just working with him the way that you would work through that kind of grief with anybody. It's not he's just helping him recenter, focus on the task ahead of him, and get through it that way. And it's very emotional and helpful, And I got to say, as someone who's very stressed out the last couple of weeks, reading that was a nice calming balm on Tim's life. Mm-hmm. And I said that in the third person again. I just spoke about myself. This podcast is warping my brain, Levi.
I can tell. You got to cast out fear.
Absolutely.
Because fear is the path to the dark side.
It's true. So, at this point, Tall sends 2J on an errand, and they begin to produce the recording that they were originally planning to fool Xanatos. And the script, it has Obi-Wan questioning why they're giving up the transport for Xanatos. He gets really impulsive, and he's just like, I just want to fight these people,
The Obi-Wan takes on this very fiery character in the recording.
Yes, this is all they're playing roles, to try to fool Xanatos. Remember, so he gives Xanatos kind of a false impression that Obi-Wan's a little unbalanced at the moment. I mean, he is a little bit, but he wants Xanatos to underestimate Obi-Wan when they do encounter each other, and they talk about how we're going to have Miro shut down the power core in order to find all the bugs, do a check of all the bugs, and get the power fully back online. And this kind of gets Xanatos. This will get Xanatos like in that moment to strike the vertex supply, and where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan will actually be waiting for them. But then but the recording has them going off and doing some other thing, which fools Xanatos into thinking that he'll be able to get to the vertex without any problems. So they finish the recording and they talk, and Tall's like, "What can I do?" Qui-Gon's telling what is it? Ali Alan, is that his name? Yeah, Ali Alan.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and Garen, about their roles and what's happening. And Tall's like, "What can I do?" And Qui-Gon says, "You've done more than enough. Your role in this is over." And Tall's obviously a little bit taken aback by that, but she understands. She's not impulsive. She's not a young teenager the way Obi-Wan is. So she understands that Qui-Gon's just being urgent right now, and she's doesn't seem as hurt by these sorts of the shortness of Qui-Gon's response. But at this point, then they put the plan into motion.
Yes. So Miro is shutting down the systems. He's shutting down everything in the temple, and then everything will be out for 12 minutes, and then slowly each system will be coming back on. So they head to the security chamber where the vertex is being kept, and the security chamber is a floor below the Jedi Council chamber, and it can only be accessed through the Jedi Council chamber. That's the only door. However, the air ducts lead to it, and that's where they think Xanatos is going to come in. So Yoda lets them into the security chamber, and then he leaves. He doesn't do anything else to help. And so Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan wait there, and then the lights go out. And then that's, of course, when, just as suspected, Xanatos. I have him in my notes. I wrote him as Zanny. Started to abbreviate his name.
Little Zan himself.
Yeah. So, old man Zan comes walking in, and with Bruck Chun, they come in through the air ducts, and they know it's them because Obi-Wan can see Xanatos' pale skin and Bruck's silver ponytail. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gonn jump out. Surprise! Lightsabers activated, and Xanatos is like visibly shook by this. And Bruck goes for his lightsaber, and Qui-Gonn knocks it out of his hand before he can even turn it on. And in this moment, Obi-Wan, he steps towards Xanatos, and Xanatos grabs Bruck and holds his lightsaber up to his neck. Now I have 2 hostages!
I appreciate your Xanatos.
Very odd moment. You can tell he's making this shit up as he go. And Obi-Wan, keeping with the I'm gonna pop a cap in your ass character, he shouts, I don't care about Bruck, let's charge him. This boy is ruthless, Qui-Gonn. Did he learn this from you? And Qui-Gonn and Obi-Wan go to attack, and Xanatos shoves Bruck away in a feeble attempt to use him as a shield. Bruck falls to the ground, scurries for his lightsaber, and Xanatos says, "Go! Make sure the girl is dead." Bruck runs off, and Obi-Wan follows.
So, Obi-Wan, he doesn't really want to leave Qui-Gon alone with Xanatos, but he does follow the order, and he goes. But Qui-Gon and Xanatos, they begin their duel, and it leads them into the council chamber. Xanatos runs off, and Qui-Gon chases him, and eventually they wind up in the council chamber, where Qui-Gon presses his advantage. He notices Xanatos' weak-ass footwork. I was thinking this is kind of like Xanatos, like, he's really confident in everything. He's kind of like Dwight Howard, the NBA player. Like, Dwight Howard was this super dominant center, right? But he never really got any like post moves or developed his skills at all. So as he aged and he lost his physical advantage, he lost a lot of his effectiveness on the court. Whereas Qui-Gon, he's like Hakeem Olajuwon. He is precise in his footwork. Anyway, so this is stupid. Qui-Gon, he talks about how Xanatos is like, oh, you're getting slow, old man, and Qui-Gon's like, oh, it's just that you talk too much, and it's a great little fight. But he's taking advantage of these little things, and he's kind of pushing towards Xanatos, but he might be letting some of his anger get into him a little bit, and Xanatos then kind of jumps up and lands on a windowsill in the Jedi Council chamber, and the window opens, and he jumps out the window. Very confidently, he says, "You will never defeat me, Qui-Gon Jinn. That is your curse." So yeah, Qui-Gon, he might have misplayed that. We'll see.
Yes. So the Obi-Wan chases Bruck into the room of 1,000 fountains, where they clash sabers. On page 102. Obi-Wan had time for a flashpoint of unreality, as though if he were in a dream. His old adversary advanced, the light of anger and rivalry in his eyes. Everything was so familiar. Bruck's aggressive stance, his small, angry eyes, the way his small little fingers grip the hilt of his lightsaber. But this isn't training. This is real. He wants to kill me. So they start to talk back and forth, and apparently Xanatos had showed Bruck the true power. What true power is. The Jedi will regret that they have held me back. And do you want to? I want to do this a little bit of an exchange here, just so we get a little bit of your Bruck Chun voice, Tim.
Boy, I don't know if I.
Start
Chun voice. I don't know if it's very different from the Xanatos voice, as you pointed out.
Well, that's the joke.
Okay.
Start at "No one chose me as a Padawan."
Where is this? Okay, yeah.
At the bottom of
see.
page 102.
No one chose me as a Padawan.
Bruck cried, grunting as he swung a brutal blow toward Obi-Wan's legs.
Obi-Wan danced backwards. Then you were not ready.
I was ready.
Bruck screamed. Then his expression grew crafty.
More ready than you, Obi-Wan. You're the one who disgraced the Order.
Obi-Wan knew that Bruck was trying to get him to lose his temper, but the words still hit their mark. His next blow had anger behind it. He saw Bruck's satisfied smile. Yes, Bruck had learned well from Xanatos.
I was always better than you.
Bruck taunted him.
Now I am even stronger.
But Obi-Wan knew that he, too, was stronger. Thanks to Qui-Gonn, he was a smarter fighter, cooler, with better strategy. As long as I don't give in to my anger. So there's a little moment here where Bruck is like trying to he's trying to force Obi-Wan to strike him with anger, give in to that dark side, but Obi-Wan knows much better. And I want to comment on your voice that Bruck has a very, very deep voice for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I know. I think it's accurate.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So as they're fighting, their fight leads them up to a cliff near the highest waterfall in the room of 1,000 fountains. And Obi-Wan's looking all around for Bant, and he sees her bound underwater. And though she can hold her breath for a long time, she still needs to surface from air periodically. So the clock is ticking. And So their fight's going on, and I have some pages written here.
Well, on page 106, there's a very big moment.
Yes, so read this in your Xanatos voice for me, please.
Okay. You read Bruck in the Xanatos voice? Why would I do that?
Yeah.
They're two separate humans. All right. So, the muscle weaknesses he had felt outside Tall's headquarters. The muscle weaknesses he had felt... what is wrong with me? The muscle weakness he had felt outside Tall's quarters returned. He could barely keep the lightsaber moving in order to counteract Bruck's blows. He tried to use the Force again, but it proved as slippery as the moss-covered rocks.
Good move, Obi-Wan.
Bruck sneered. And it explains the origin of the Obi-Wan nickname, which we talked about in the first episode, and we dramatized in the second episode. Jude didn't invent the Obi-Wan nickname, but she sticks by it, and she brings it back.
She's honoring it.
And this is a huge moment. I have to say, my mouth turned into a giant smile. I was smiling from ear to ear in this moment as I was reading it. I was so happy. The happiest I've been in many months. So thank you, Jude Watson, for that.
So Obi-Wan knows that Mira will be soon rebooting the temple, and the first two things are going to come back on are the security, followed by the water pumps. And Obi-Wan catches sight, as he's battling Bruck, a red security light, so that it's any moment now the water pumps are going to turn back on. Bruck lunges at him, and instead of blocking him, Obi-Wan steps aside, sending Bruck into the dry waterfall bed. Just then, the water comes rushing back, drowning Bruck's lightsaber, rendering it useless. Hang on for one moment. Keep this. Mel's in the room. She hasn't read the book yet. There's a major spoiler about to come up. You may choose to cover your ears if you like.
Oh, no.
I am moving ahead with the major spoiler. All right.
Give me a second to get out.
Okay, she's stepping outside.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. This recording's going pretty well, I think.
It is.
It's
very well.
solid.
All right.
She's out?
Very good. Yep, she's out. So keep that. That's hilarious. So filled with rage, Bruck he's reaching for anything, and he's throwing rocks at Obi-Wan's. But remember, the moss is slippery on the rocks, and he slips on the rocks, and he starts to tumble down the waterfall. In an instant, Obi-Wan deactivates his lightsaber, and he lunges to grab Bruck Chun, and their fingertips come so close. but he's too late, and Bruck falls, and he hits the rock like Piggy in Lord of the Flies. Bruck Chun is dead.
Wow, you referenced
Hang
the
on.
book.
I know. Nell, you can come back in now. Anyway, I don't think she heard me.
Well,
but Obi-Wan, he dives into the water, and he frees Bant, and he brings her to shore, and he tries to apologize to her, and she's like, no, you don't have to apologize. And he wants to stay and help her, but he knows Qui-Gonn needs help. I have to help Qui-Gonn, he says. Will you be all right? Bant's breathing had become easier. Her nod was strong. I'm fine. Go. You're his Padawan. He needs you.
Oh. You should have known this all along, Obi-Wan. Come on. Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
such a dick.
Chapter 18, Qui-Gon, right after Xanatos jumps out of the window, he follows him immediately. The winds are super high. We're near the top of Coruscant. There's all kinds of stuff happening. Cabs whizzing by. Everything's happening. And so they kind of jump around on a few vehicles, and then they eventually get to this narrow platform. And that's very narrow, and so Qui-Gon has to actually adjust his fighting style a little bit with jabs instead of kind of big swings because the wind would blow him away. So Xanatos, as they're fighting, he reveals a big part of his plan. He's just he says that the temple is set to implode upon the full power coming back on at the temple.
Hang on. One thing though he does say here is, haven't you forgotten something, Qui-Gon? The last part of the takeover equation.
Oh.
Devastation.
Yes! The equation has been completed, or he believes it's about to be complete. And the way he would devastate the Jedi Temple is to apparently destroy it. And Qui-Gon's not sure to believe him. He thinks he might just be saying something to get away. And he says, and Xanatos also says something. He kind of lies on himself a little bit. He tells on himself, and he says, "What you revere can destroy you." So Xanatos leaps off the platform and onto a cab that begins to zoom away. And Qui-Gon, he could catch up and continue to grapple with Xanatos, but he makes the decision to save the temple if he has to. So he gets back to the council chamber. And he tries his comlink, but the communications aren't back up yet. He can't contact Miro. So and so are the turbo lifts. They're down still. So he has to figure out a way to get there. But right then, Obi-Wan shows up, and Qui-Gon informs him about the crisis. He's like, they're set to blow. We have to get to Miro now. And Obi-Wan's like, follow me.
So they race down the hall, and Qui-Gon asks, Bant? She's fine, Obi-Wan said shortly. Then he says, Bruck is dead. A pall had settled over Obi-Wan's face. He would need to talk about this later. Qui-Gon knew, but there's more important things going on right now. So Obi-Wan claims that he has studied the diagrams. The way they can get to the tech center is through the air ducts. So they cut through the air ducts, and there's a lot of mentions of the Force swirling around him. And then they burst into Miro's office. Stop! They tell him that the place is rigged to blow, but Miro's like, I don't know how. I've checked the bugs. I checked for bugs twice. There's nothing unusual. And Qui-Gon recalls what Xanatos says. Something you revere will destroy you. So Qui-Gon, he's like, where's the fusion core? Apparently it's just outside of Miro's office. So Qui-Gon walks over, he opens up the lid, and surprise, 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 the healing crystals of fire are set inside. Had the fusion core been fired up, those crystals would have exploded, creating a chain reaction that would have sent them all to hell. The day is saved.
So, in the aftermath of all this, the temple starts to return to normal, but Obi-Wan is still out of sorts about Bruck's death, that he isn't sure about his future, he doesn't know what's going to happen. So he goes and he visits Bant, and she's sitting by the waterfall where she almost died, and she tells him, I don't want to, this is one of my favorite places in the temple, I'm not going to let that experience ruin it for me. And she tells him not to blame himself for Bruck's death. And there's an interesting part here. I believe it's on page 126. Am I right about that?
I believe so. Yes. Oh, this is where Obi-Wan...
24.
Finally... Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
124. After she says, don't blame yourself for Bruck's death, he says, I know I tried my best to save him, Obi-Wan said, but my heart is still heavy. That is how it should be, Bant said. A life is lost. When he still had life, he had a chance to change. And this is what Star Wars is about, people. So all these people that don't want Kilo to be redeemed in Rise of Skywalker, read your Jedi Apprentice.
Damn right.
So anyway, they continue their conversation, and he apologizes to her again. She says, "Don't bother, it's fine." She had but Obi-Wan, he's not ready. She recognizes something happened to you on Melita Dawn, right? And you won't tell me. And she pauses delicately. When you are ready, I would like to hear what happened on Melita Dawn. And so this is an interesting part here. Obi-Wan took a shuddering breath. He could not say her name aloud. But somehow he knew he must. He knew that if this moment passed, he might never speak of her again to a living soul, and something in him would die. Her name was Sarasi, he said. He felt a great tide of sorrow rise in him. But he also felt a release by saying her name. Sarasi, he said again. He lifted his face and felt the cooling spray. Suddenly, he felt stronger, as though Sarasi's vibrant spirit stood by him and touched his shoulder. We had a connection that I can't explain. It wasn't the result of time, of hours spent together. It wasn't the result of secrets or confidences. It was something else. You loved her, Bant said. Obi-Wan swallowed. Yes, she inspired me. We fought together side by side. We trusted each other. And when she died, I blamed myself. When I thought that you might die, I knew I could not go on if it had happened. But you would have, Obi-Wan, Bant said softly. We all go on. She leaned against him, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. You saved my life. We will go on together. Oh. I love these books.
I know.
There's just a real quiet wisdom to these books that is, they're good lessons for the age group, but they're also very calming for people like us, like us freaks reading these books for 10-year-olds. So, it just seems like that. They abound in these books. So, anyway, meanwhile, Qui-Gonn is sitting with Tall, and he's going to be meeting with the council, and he gives them to give him his decision about Obi-Wan's future, about whether he's going to take him back as a Padawan. And he's still pretty unsure if he can rebuild trust with Obi-Wan. And Tall offers him a metaphor about this cup that he has, and also the artisans of the planet Aurea. This is on pages 128 and 129. If you want to read this.
All right, I can do that. 128.
So,
right.
Just right from the top.
All right. It was beautiful, Qui-Gonn saw. The material was so thin it was almost translucent. The color, a blue so pale it was almost white. The shape was simple, with no handle or curved rim. I use it even though I may break it, she said. She placed it down carefully. Have you ever heard of the planet Aurora?
Aurea, maybe?
Aurea. We'll go with Aurea. Of course, Qui-Gonn said. Aurea is noted for its fine artisans. They have the best... This is Tall speaking. They have the best glass workers in the galaxy there, Tall went on. Many have wondered why this world was so advanced at the art. Many have wondered why this world has advanced the art so much? Is it the golden sands, the temperature of the fires, the long tradition? Whatever it may be, they make the most beautiful vessels in the galaxy, so highly prized that they are priceless objects. But occasionally, someone is careless, or an accident occurs, and one is broken. Tull picked up her cup again. Just like I could break this cup. But these artisans have a greater art than fashioning of the vessels. They remake the shattered ones. And in that remaking, they find their highest art. They take the pieces of something beautiful that have been smashed and create something even more beautiful. You see the seams of the break, but the piece is still flawless. Because it has once been broken, it becomes more valuable than before. Tull placed the blue cup before Qui-Gonn. The Jedi sat in silence, absorbing the lesson. Could it be, he wondered slowly, that the process of rebuilding trust with Obi-Wan would not be painful, but satisfying? He picked up the delicate cup. It almost disappeared in his large hand. His fingers closed around the fragile shape, yet the cup did not break. He could not make again what he had, but what if a new thing he made was stronger than before, because it had been once broken?
Oh, good stuff.
Great stuff. Fiery stuff.
Cool stuff. Slick stuff.
Groovy stuff. Anyway, so Qui-Gonn and Obi-Wan, they go meet with the council and fill them in on Witdown. And I want to say, just for a moment here, we had a lightsaber battle in, not just in the temple, but in the council chambers.
Yes.
We had a lightsaber battle in the Room of the Thousand Fountains. Where the hell was the rest of the council when this went down? If Qui-Gon knew that, like, yeah, they're going to come after the Vertex, couldn't they have just gotten the whole council in the room? Yeah. And they could have, just all jumped him. The whole council jumps on Xanatos and Brock.
It's a problem.
Anyway, it's a problem. But we all know Ki-Adi-Mundi would show up as a hologram because he's never frickin' around.
Tell me about it.
I know. Jeez. What a loser. So anyway, moving on past that. Obi-Wan asked the council that he not be accepted back, but instead he be put on probation. He hopes by secretly he hopes by asking for probation they'll be like, no, you're a Jedi again. But instead they grant his probation, and he has to remain at the temple while he has to meet with the various council members and discuss being a Jedi with them. Sounds very exciting. As for Xanatos, the council agrees that he is not an enemy of the Jedi, but Qui-Gonn's enemy. And if Qui-Gonn wishes to pursue him, he will be without the support of the Jedi. They leave, and Qui-Gonn, he is not happy with this ruling. So we have, I'm going to read we can read the to the end of the book here on page 131. They stood in the hallway together. Okay. All right. They stood in the hallway together. Obi-Wan saw that Qui-Gonn was struggling to contain his emotions. He knew the Jedi Knight was bitterly disappointed. You have told me many times Yoda always turns out to be right, Obi-Wan tried cautiously, even when it doesn't seem so.
Not this time, Qui-Gonn said grimly. I am going after him, Obi-Wan.
Surprised, Obi-Wan fell silent. He knew how much Qui-Gonn respected the wishes of the council. To oppose them must have been a wretching decision. Then he pictured Qui-Gonn alone, hunting his enemy, with an essential truth pierced him. Then he pictured Qui-Gonn alone, hunting his enemy, and then an essential truth pierced him. The picture was wrong. There was a piece missing. Even if Qui-Gonn couldn't see it, Obi-Wan could. Obi-Wan's hand fell on the hilt of his lightsaber. He took a deep breath. He did not need to pause to weigh on the implications of what he was about to say. He knew it was right. Then I'm coming with you, he said.
Oh. Yes. Yes.
So Obi-Wan already breaking his probation
Yes,
to Temple.
but I think it's interesting because it's like, Qui-Gon's learning from Obi-Wan, like, this is what's right. I know I have to go after him. And it's interesting because in episode 1, Qui-Gon's really portrayed as kind of a rebel, like a bit of a,
there's a reason why he's not on the council.
The reason why he's not on the council. And it's interesting, these books kind of posit that they kind of got that strain from each other in some ways. Like Obi-Wan becomes more rule-abiding and Qui-Gon becomes less as their master-apprentice relationship goes on. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting for sure. This book, let's kind of just get into it. The final thoughts here. You touched on one of that's an obvious issue that they're in the Jedi Temple and no other Jedi who are there seem to help with the plan except for Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Tall, and then Bant and Garen and Ali Alan. And
Now Mace Windu, of course, is around to just destroy Obi-Wan anytime Obi-Wan does something.
Yeah, but he's not going to do anything, apparently. Mace is falling down our ranking scale.
I agree.
I don't know where I want to...
4.
Yeah, who knows? I love Sam Jackson, but...
I don't love the character, and even in Clone Wars, I don't love the character of Mace Windu. I think he's highly, highly overrated. And one of the moments that I really don't like is in Clone Wars is Boba Fett returns and tries to kill him, and they arrest Boba Fett, and there's this moment where Mace Windu could just be like, "Hey, I'm sorry I killed your dad." But he just doesn't. I can't even remember what he says, but it's really weak, and he just walks away, and it's like, you did nothing to squash this problem.
Well, here's the thing.
You still have this enemy.
I like Mace Windu as a character, but he is he's everything. He is like the face of what was wrong with the Jedi Order in their last days. He's arrogant. He's very interested in the kind of the political machinations of the Jedi in a way that he shouldn't be. But he's a fascinating character. I'm curious if he'll ever get any real focus in these books, or if he's just kind of going to be a stern guy coming in here or there to talk shit.
Well, also too with episode 1, that's all he is in episode 1.
That's true, but I'm just curious if any book in the future, maybe not in Jedi Apprentice, but going forward with the Jude books with Jedi Quest.
Well. Maybe Samuel L. Jackson will get his way and he'll come back.
Oh, I don't know about that. I love Samuel L. Jackson. My love for him only grows with age. I don't know why. He's the best. But anyway, so yeah, this book, I think that's a big issue. And there's the only other problem. I do think this is very good. I think there's a lot.
I do too.
This is one of. I like this better than the 2 Melita Dawn books, probably. Mm-hmm. At least individually. Maybe those collectively were a more interesting story, but this one, I think, I loved getting more of the Jedi Temple. I loved, because, that's one of my favorite things in Star Wars. I always am excited when there's stuff set there. And the Xanatos stuff, my biggest issue is honestly, as much as we make fun of him, and I don't think he's a very good character, there should have been more Bruck in this book. And because he is kind of one of the 2 antagonists, and the climax does hinge on him to some degree. And really the only relationship we have with Bruck and Obi-Wan is a very goofy scene at the beginning of the first book that they refer back to, the Obi-Wan stuff, but the books have kind of with Jude coming onto the series, they've matured so much in terms of the sophistication of the storytelling that it feels like a kind of callback to something else, almost a different thing. I think Bruck and Xanatos' relationship, I would have liked to see more of that. I'm curious if any of that is explored later once. I'm sure we're going to go to Telos at some point in these books, so I wonder if maybe then we'll meet Bruck's father or something like that. This book, though, generally speaking, I thought, again, the Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan character stuff, I like how patient these books are, because, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon doesn't accept Obi-Wan as his apprentice the first time till the end of, the second book, right? And and it's going to take a little bit here, too. Like, obviously, they're now going to be working together again, and I think Qui-Gon wants to. I'm sure by the end of the next book we're going to have that. But these books do a very good job. So, yeah, what are your general thoughts? Well, I'll rate it in a minute.
Okay, I agree with a lot of this, because something else, like, Bruck and Xanatos interact once in this entire book, and it's when Xanatos grabs Bruck to use him as, like, a hostage shield, and that's the only time we see them together, and not apprentices, but students can't, like, leave the temple. There's no mention that they can, like, leave and explore Coruscant. So that means that Xanatos had to be hanging out in the temple and have, like, seduced Bruck to the dark side in the temple. So, like, he was just, like, this predator hanging out at the school. So, yeah, I agree. I wanted more out of that relationship. But what I kind of wanted, I didn't have time to do this. I wanted to reread this book again, but, like, read it front to back, not pausing to take notes, because I think it would have been a page turner, because I wanted it to just turn the page, but I was stopping to take the notes.
Well, you know, that I found that this is a little inside baseball for our audience, but you take notes in a notebook, right?
Well, I've switched to the computer. I filled up my solo notebook, the one scene in the Disney video that I tried to get Kylo Ren to sign. I filled it, so I've moved to the computer. A much easier way to take notes.
It does take less time between chapters.
Yeah, and you told me you took them on the computer, and I'm just like, why the hell have I never thought of that before? So that's how I take notes. So I'm going to give this book, I'm rolling it now, 8 midichlorians. And I'm going to give it an Obi-Wan vibe.
Yeah, well, he's the big part of it, so that's appropriate. I think we're in agreement here. I'm going to go 8. We talked a little bit. You made a bit of you made a template for a chart, a midichlorian chart. That have you posted that? You think you're going to post that on Instagram?
I gotta finish it. It'll come when the Guardians episode comes out.
All right, so you guys probably by the time you're hearing this, you can go on our Instagram or Facebook and you can find a chart that shows who exactly is on what level, and it's a fun little companion piece to this show. It'll give you an idea how you would rate these Star Wars books based on midichlorians. So, we're going to both go 8 midichlorians on this, and we're going to characterize it as an Obi-Wan. But before we go, we did a segment in the first couple episodes where we had a mailbag segment, and we haven't really...
Wait. Oh. Wait, I have a Yoda quote.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, big news! Yoda quote, hit news. That button, sir!
Begun. The Clone War has...
All right. We're on page 30. This is after the turbo lift full of children scene. Qui-Gon and Yoda are reflecting on this situation. And Yoda turns to him. Taunting us, the intruder is endangering the lives of babies for a joke? A joke?
I like
this
that.
Isn't a bad line, but it's just silly.
It's just fun. It's fun to hear Yoda say certain things. It's just
endangering it's funny to hear the endangering the lives of babies, and then have that be followed by for a joke.
The lives of babies is also just a funny phrase. I don't know why. Infants, you might imagine, would be more commonly used in that context. So yeah, that there's our Yoda segment. I think we might have to do something to spice the Yoda segment up.
I think so.
Well, we'll have to think about that. If listeners have any ideas, they can email us at padawanlibrary@gmail.com or message us on our Facebook page at Padawan Library, or direct message us on Twitter and Instagram at Padawan Library.
Yep.
And that's how we receive a letter today. We have a letter in our mailbag.
Yes.
And that's very exciting because we did a couple letters in our first couple episodes, but they were all from our very close friends. And this is our first real fan letter, so why don't you take it away?
All right. So this letter comes to us from Jenny, and Jenny is found us through Instagram. Her Instagram handle is Virginia P. Moss, and this is what she has written. She said, "Hi, I just wanted to know how much I'm enjoying your Padawan Library podcast. I was 12 when the Jedi Apprentice books first came out, and while I love a lot of the expanded universe, Jude Watson books hold a special place in my heart. I heard about the new Claudia Gray novel, Master and Apprentice, and decided to reread the Jedi Apprentice books before it was released, and I found your podcast through Instagram. I'm really loving catching up on the previous episodes of your podcast, and I can't wait to see what books you guys cover in the future. Hope you find some time to take on the Jedi Academy books too." Good to know. I have a question for you guys. Since you guys are coming up on the Melita Dawn story arc in Jedi Apprentice, what do you think of Obi-Wan's decision at the end of Defenders of the Dead? In what ways do you think his decision shaped him as a character, and how do you think it changed his relationship with Qui-Gonn Jinn? One final part here. Also, I wanted to say that I really enjoyed your dramatic dragon fiction you did in the first podcast, and I think it should be a reoccurring section on your show. Thanks, Jenny. I had completely forgotten about your dragon fan fiction.
Yeah, well, it wasn't mine. I didn't write it. I can't remember. I know. I have to go back and find it. But that's not a bad idea. We should maybe try to find some short fan fiction to do some dramatic readings again in the future.
Maybe we should if we have a Yoda line, we should adapt that line into a story or something.
That's not a bad idea. We'll figure it out. There's going to be all kinds of segments and new stuff. As to the main question about Obi-Wan's decision to leave the Jedi Order, and while we've already covered all these books that deal with this, I do think there's something to this question, how did it shape Obi-Wan in the future as a character, and how did it change his relationship with Qui-Gonn? I talked a little bit about this at the end of our review today, and I think that Obi-Wan felt kind of not shamed might be the wrong word, but tempered by his experience on Melita Dawn and his regret that came from that decision. And I think that actually maybe informs his kind of sterner personality when he gets older. What's interesting is that Qui-Gonn's reaction to Obi-Wan's decision kind of makes him reflect, and it makes him a little looser. It makes him a little more willing to go against the Jedi, as is outlined at the end of this book. Again, we're reading these books for the first time. I know a lot of our listeners grew up with them, and that's great. I'm really excited to have their expertise, and I hope they continue to send letters like this. This is very thoughtful stuff. But I think that's kind of it. They don't switch roles because they're learning, but they're learning from each other. Qui-Gonn's kind of loosening it up and getting to the point where when we see him in Phantom Menace, he's the kind of he's the rogue Jedi in some ways. The Jedi Council doesn't want anything to do with him. They're tired of this guy. And and Qui-Gonn and Obi-Wan, he becomes he eventually he gets on the council, and he becomes kind of part of the establishment of the Jedi.
And you know what you mentioned about how Qui-Gonn was such this rule follower, and even in the book we just read, there's the moment where after they have the council meeting where they tell Obi-Wan not to intervene with the investigation, and then after him and Qui-Gon and Yoda talk about the babies, the endangered lives of babies, Yoda is hey, if Obi-Wan comes around, let him hang out with you. Let him be part of the investigation. And Qui-Gon's but you told me not to. And it's loosen up a bit, buddy.
Yoda's always what's interesting is I think this question also begs thoughts about Yoda. And Yoda kind of is always wavering on both sides of this kind of divide. What he is the head of the Jedi Order. He's really the head of the Jedi, so he's kind of got to be the face of that. But I think in his heart, and he is much closer to Qui-Gonn and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan in this early going, and Qui-Gonn by the time we get to Phantom Menace, he's much closer to that spirit. And part of his character is when Order 66 happens, he realized that he failed because he allowed himself to become too encased by the strictures of the structured, this too structured nature of the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars, and that's what leads him into hiding for 20 plus years. So, but yeah, no, thank you for the question. What was her name again?
Great question. This is Jenny, also known as Virginia P. Moss on Instagram. Thank you so much. Continue listening. Send us more questions if you'd like. And all the other listeners, send us questions or message us on all of the social medias or just comment on them. I try to comment back. And
I even get in there sometimes, but...
yeah, yeah, you gotta know the right name.
Yeah, I know, it's a problem.
On
Anyway, I'm bad at this. So next week, what are we doing next week? We're doing the Day of Reckoning, number 8.
The Day of Reckoning.
The Jedi.
Yes, and this book has a very, very cool cover to it. We have Qui-Gon in a cage. With Obi-Wan is in a cage. Qui-Gon is trying to cut himself out of the cage. We see on a large screen, it looks to be Xanatos, and underneath this cage, which is hoisted into the air, there looks to be an angry mob with torches, like they're going to torch Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan alive.
So this is the new postmodern. This is the new modern Prometheus. Frankenstein himself. So we so that's the next episode, and then normally we do 3 of the Jedi Apprentices in a row, and then we do an off week. But we're doing our off week 2 weeks from now. We're going to keep hyping this. We're doing our 20th anniversary of Phantom Menace podcast. That'll be out on May 17th, 2 days before the actual 20th anniversary, which is a Sunday, and we release on Friday. So, but
yep, no spoilers. There's going to be a list.
There's going to be a big list. We're making a big list. We're going to maybe talk to a couple guests, and we're going to cover some of the Episode 1 journals, including the Queen Amidala Padme one, which is written by our Queen, Jude. So get prepared for that. But next week, Day of Reckoning, Jedi Apprentice number 8. Meanwhile, just keep up with us on all the social media stuff. And for now... the library is closed.
See ya.
Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.